This year, as you know, our theme has been a sense of faith, ascending, a sense of faith. And we left off with that theme for Lent, and we'll continue exploring that theme of a sense of faith today, which we begin a 4-week series through the month of May, focusing on the sense of wisdom of the favorite mountains in the Bible, sacred mountains of the Bible, and the stories therein, and the teachings and the events that happened at those sacred mountains. All of us, I would suspect, are people in this room who love mountains, who are enchanted by mountains. We wouldn't live here if we didn't at some level love mountains, or at least feel inspired by them or helped by them when we look upon them. There's something about mountains, and we love the mountains. And so these are 4 very favorite mountains in the Bible, 4 stories that we will cover. Today we begin with Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai. And each of these mountains conveys very significant and consequential events that happened, some events that we may not understand, like today's reading, a mysterious mythological reading. You can hear some of the ancient ideas, like the idea of staying away from a woman. Somehow that made you unclean. The idea of not touching something that was holy. So these are ancient ideas about the mythology of mountains and God, and where God came down to meet humankind. The high places, as they were called, where people met with God or the divine. They were called liminal spaces or liminal places, where the veil between the here and the there, between the God and the human, that veil was thin. A liminal space, a set-apart place, and a place that was holy and sacred and set apart, but also a place that beckoned, that called to you. I look up into the hills, and I gain strength from looking onto those hills. George Mallory, as I mentioned, was asked, that famous question, why do you climb? He said, because it's there. And I think the real deeper meaning, the real deeper answer is not because it's there, it's because I feel called to be there with it. I want to be there. That's why I climb and ascend to the mountains of God. I want to be there. I want to feel called and beckoned to a higher place in my life. Mountains are a symbol of so many things. They're a symbol of far-seeingness, of perspective. They're a symbol of a place of meeting sky and earth. They're a symbol where the divine comes down and meets the human. And many, many, many religious traditions have that as their place of meeting, the high place of meeting, including these very mountains we are looking at today for the Southern Ute tribe. Place is grace, and more than anything, mountains are a place of grace, where things change for people. And in this story of Moses, we see that something significant changed. And I want to share a little bit about that historically and then apply it to our lives spiritually and practically. So today we're talking about Mount Sinai, and in the weeks to come we'll talk about the Beatitude Mountain. It's not really a mountain, it's more like a hill. But then we'll talk about Mount Tabor, the Transfiguration Mountain, and Mount of Olives, the Ascension Mountain. So there's wonderful things to come. But today, Mount Sinai, perhaps some of you have been to Mount Sinai. Just show of hands. Anyone been there? Oftentimes people have gone because they go to Petra or they go to Egypt or Jerusalem and they take the trip. It's not that far of a drive to go to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is also known as the Jebel Musa, the mountain of Moses. It stands at its peak at 7,500 feet. 7,500 feet. That's pretty significant because the ascent actually from the valley where St. Catherine's Monastery is and has been since about the 3rd century is 2,500 feet directly above you. So 2,500 feet of ascent. That's pretty good. That's pretty good of ascent to climb up. It is in the southern Sinai Peninsula, the upside-down triangle that forms the peninsula between the Red Sea to the west, the Mediterranean Sea to the north, and the Gulf of Aden to the east, and the Gulf of Arabia to the south, the southern sea there, that is called the Gulf of Arabia. And of course, to the west, across the Red Sea, is the continent of Africa. So Sinai, this peninsula, became such a very significant, important place of commerce and travel, of moving and connecting the people of the continent of Africa to the continent of Asia, and then farther north to the continent of Europe. It was a crossroads, a significant pollination spiritually. And it's no wonder that at the significant bridge between Africa and Asia, that God would meet with people and bring about something new for a culture named Israel. Now, whatever you make of the ancient stories of the scriptures, like this one, there's something to be said that it's a very important story to the nation of Israel, to the people of Israel. This is a founding story for them. This would be like our story of the founding of the Republic, or the Revolutionary War. This was a significant moment in the development of the history of the people of Israel. Just before this, in fact, the text is very specific. It says 3 moons they were in the wilderness after their escape from Egypt. For 3 moons, that means 3 months. They finally got to the southern part of the Sinai, where the Mount of Sinai is. They're not exactly sure which mountain they went to, but high likelihood it's this one, called Mount Sinai. And they stayed there for 11 months. They were camped out at the base of Mount Sinai. So you can imagine underneath one of these mountains camping out as a group of people, and how significant this was, reflecting on the fact that they had just left everything. They had just left all the comforts and ease and the wealth of Egypt, even though they were servants to some degree. They were glad to be gone, but they also pined for all that they had left and lost. They were grieving. They were people now on pilgrimage, and they took refuge in the wilderness. Moses had been probably in this area for some 40 years as he grew up there shepherding sheep for his father-in-law, Midian. And he ended up marrying a woman there. So he knew the area, and that's nearby where he had the experience of the burning bush. So he knew this area. He had become a contemplative. He had become quiet in the desert before God called him back to lead the people out of Egypt. So that's a little background on the Mount of Sinai and the historical background. So here they are camped out. Moses doesn't know where he's going, and he starts to get this beckoning call from God to go up the mountain, ascend. Now, mountain climbing wasn't a sport back then. So he is definitely going because he feels called to join this mysterious noumenon, this holy of holy presence that's shrouded in a cloud of darkness, light within darkness. It's very metaphorical language, but very powerful and evocative for all of us. Now, if you read the text closely, you'll see that there was 4 ascents. Moses went up the mountain 4 times. It's hard to follow along in the text, but you've got to read Exodus chapter 19, and then you've got to read Exodus chapter 34. But if you're interested, I encourage you to read it. And in between, there's all this giving of law stuff, all this crazy, specific giving of law stuff, from how to treat someone who steals your goat to what happens if someone's wife dies, how to build a tabernacle, all sorts of things like that. But there's 4 times he goes up to the mountain to climb the mountain, and 2 of those times, 2 of the 4, he's up there for 40 days and 40 nights. So he's up there a significant amount of time. Again, very symbolic, beautiful number. That meant a lot to the people of Israel and foreshadows Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. But nevertheless, there's something going on for Moses at a deep spiritual level. He is experiencing transformation. He is experiencing revelation. He is growing as a human being. He is discovering something that no one knew before about God and the nature of God. And whatever you make about this symbolic language, clearly it touched Moses just like Spirit has touched other prophets throughout human history. And it changed him. And it changed him at a physiological level that literally he was radiating. He had a facial that you can die for. He was radiating light. He was beautiful in his being. So Mount Sinai is a powerful founding story and location for the people of Israel. And we could talk a lot about that, but I want to land this just on a personal and spiritual level for all of us. And if you don't mind, I'll just take a moment to share 4 insights that came to me about how to apply this for my own life and hopefully by extension to your life. What are my lessons from Mount Sinai? The first is that sometimes at certain points in our life, key seasons on our journey occur, that we must heed the call to solitude and in the wilderness and listen for a life-changing guidance. There are certain key moments in our life when we must heed the call to solitude. Now, the other mountains that we'll consider in the weeks to come all were close by cities and towns. They were populated areas. You could see Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. You're looking down at it. But Mount Sinai is literally in the middle of nowhere, a nowhere you don't want to go. because it could kill you. That desert could kill you. Sometimes at certain points in our life where only we know, the solitude beckons to us to go up to the Judweeb and sit on the bench and be alone. And it does something to us. It gives us something. It gives us life-changing guidance. Perhaps you've been there and you know places in your life that you go to for guidance. In the case of Moses, he was giving total new guidance. He was giving a covenant, you are my people, and the law, and this is how I want you to live. It was a life-changing moment for Moses, and can't imagine the fear and trepidation he must have had to go down the mountain with the 10 Commandments and say, we are a community, you are my people, I am your leader, and here is our law from God, and this is the mountain of our God. It must have been extraordinary. But what would it take to be that type of person, that courageous type of leader? What would it be to face the world that you're afraid of? It requires strength and courage that only comes from time and solitude, in a place of solitude. That's the first thing, lesson from Sinai. Sometimes, certain points in our life, we've got to get away, far away. Second, the first ascent corresponds with a new teaching, a new lesson, a new covenant, a new relationship, taken to a new level. Moses' first ascent, he begins something new. He experiences something new. He learns something new. He grows in a way that he wasn't expecting. Our first ascents, when it comes to mountains and to our spiritual development, are the hardest, because sometimes we don't know what we're getting into. We don't know what the next step involves. Our first ascent in our spiritual journey, as well as climbing a mountain, is the hardest. The first step is the hardest. But then he gets to return again, and he's wiser. He knows the way. It's not as surprising. So if your life is going through a first ascent moment, know that you will be carried through by God's grace, and you will learn something very important, very significant, that you otherwise couldn't learn if this wasn't a first ascent. The first things we do sometimes are the hardest, and then it gets easier. It's always hard on the first day of school to be the new kid in school. It's always hard the first Sunday to be the new pastor. It's always hard the first things that we do, the first dates, the first kisses, etc. Some harder than others. Third, our journey may require more than one ascent or visit. This is not a one-and-done spiritual journey. Sometimes we must revisit old sacred places for us to keep growing, for us to be reminded of God's faithfulness. This summer, July 5th, marks the 20th anniversary of what I call my awakening, which happened in the Teton Mountains. I don't know if I'll be able to go back to that place in person this summer, but I will be there in my heart remembering. We can always return again, and it might require more than one ascent. And lastly, Sinai is a mountain that teaches us about the glory of God more than anything, symbolized by the terrifying volcanic eruptions of cloud and ash and thunder and powerful sights. It's probably a volcanic event or perhaps a spaceship. I don't know. But it's extraordinarily overwhelming. It's a profound moment of glory and awesomeness, of terror, of amazingness, of the glory of God. And you could say this is a revelation to Moses of the transcendence of God, the otherness of God, the holiness of God. And this is an aspect of God that we don't feel comfortable with, that it touches our life and it scares us, it burns us, it's thundering, it drives us away. We don't want the holiness of God, the almightiness of God. It's an aspect of God where we just feel like we'd be like a grease spot melted in God's presence by God's holiness. It'd be like getting closer to the sun and just melting away by the glory, awesomeness of God. If it's that way for the sun, imagine the source of the whole universe, not just our little galaxy and solar system. So it's just powerful image of God's glory. It's not our preferred way of thinking about God anymore because of the revelation of Jesus. And I always like to say, why didn't God just start out with Jesus? Why did God start out with Mount Sinai and Moses with this terrifying awesomeness? God didn't start out with Jesus. God started out with Moses. And so there's something about learning that we all have to go through that stage of life where we discover our relationship with the transcendent Almighty God. But our relationship with that God doesn't end there. It moves to the sweetness of the Spirit and the intimacy of the presence of Christ with us inwardly. And the immanence of God becomes to the fore, not so much the transcendence of God. Sadly, and this is really my heartbreak for most of Christianity and most of the monotheistic traditions like Islam and Judaism, they're hung up on the transcendence of God, on the holiness of God, on I'll kill you if you don't do this and this and this, if you don't follow my laws, you'll be stricken down. Much of religion is caught at that level. It's a very low level. It's kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade level of understanding what God is. That doesn't mean when we get to ninth grade we throw out first grade. It has been included but transcended. And that knowledge of the transcendence of God is still there, but it's not the dominant factor. We've discovered the different aspect of God, the aspect of God's love, which Jesus revealed. Which is why we don't stay at Mount Sinai. We pilgrimage to Jerusalem. We pilgrimage to the love of God, where the revelation isn't the transcendent holy God, don't touch me God, I'm holier than thou, but as I am with you here as one of you, I love you so much, God. And I look forward to sharing that next week as we move forward. So, in summary, may we be drawn to the high places because we want to be there, because we need to experience something that we can't experience here on the day-to-day level. And when we get to that high place, may God reveal something about God to each of us in a new, profound way that will shake us to our core and we'll never be the same. And we'll go down to the mountain and tell people. We might even radiate with the light of God's love. Look at what great things He has done for me. I'll see you up there this summer. Amen.